All right, welcome back. This is a all-new show called Money Mixology. I am your host, Jason Moore. I have been on before when I was with Matt Ingram during the Raider Money Hour. I do want to introduce you to the new show. We're going to be doing this every Saturday morning. Again, my name is Jason Moore. I am a certified financial planner. I'm also a certified financial therapist, which is really what this show will focus on. We are going to dive into the intersection between psychology and your money. So, why do you do sort of the crazy things with money that you do? And how do we fix it? How do we talk about it? How do we understand those things that are happening? I am also an adjunct professor in the finance department here at Wright State. I teach the personal finance courses. I teach a lot of the classes in the CFP track or the financial planning track. I've been here for over a decade. This is sort of my home university. So, I am a Raider through and through. And for today's first show, I'm actually really excited to introduce one of my good friends, Mr. Mike over here. He is someone I've worked with both at the gym when we work out together and also sort of helping him and his wife as they prepare for the journey into retirement at some point in the future. And Mike, I believe you are also a Raider at heart. Is that correct?
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Go
Awesome.
Raiders.
That's right. So now, was the radio invented by Edison when you were here?
He was working on a prototype,
Okay.
as I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, we were still doing smoke signals from anything more than a mile away. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
radio shows were a lot harder back then
Oh,
to get
yeah.
across.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
For the audience, I want to be clear on a few things. Mike and I are going to talk through just sort of his journey, his background with his family, and we'll talk about some of his career decisions, and then really kind of get into the sort of your mental ideas around retirement as we get there. If you are new to the show and you have not listened before, please subscribe. We are a podcast as well. So after today's show, we'll throw this out on the streaming platforms, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, all that. It is Money Mixology. And so you can go out there and search. There's already episodes out there. So if the content's interesting and you had some fun today, go listen to some of the stuff that's already been produced out there. And again, we'll be doing this every Saturday with guests, so you can get a flavor for what's going on in people's lives, and we can talk through some of the challenges that we're all experiencing. And if you ever listen to the podcast, I'm pretty clear that I am not immune to this stuff. Right? I have lots of experience, but I do lots of dumb things too. So, all right. So give me sort of the quick rundown on, or maybe not even quick, the rundown on your upbringing, your background. How was money as a child? What was it like in your family kind of thing?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd love to give a quick shout out to my lovely wife, Sharon, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. I feel really blessed and very happy to be here. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. To kind of look back and think about, how did I kind of get exposed to the idea of commerce and money and savings and all that, and through my family background? I think it was a pretty interesting background. Had a pretty good sized family, and I think it was a classic. Um, Authority. My dad retired as a colonel, and we just pretty much, dad and mom did the money thing, and we didn't worry about it other than that we were always told there wasn't any. And so, so it was, it was really much more of a save money every chance that you could. Now, having two older brothers who we all ate well, that was probably the idea of where I got my money, which was it usually shows up and it's usually there, but that kind of had its own, I don't know, misgivings about how you actually prepare for it. As a young 14 or 15-year-old, you're getting a part-time job, and that was really just for gas money. And as you got a little bit older, you started to see, oh, so I'm supposed to do something with this money other than just go from here to there.
Right.
And I've told you this story before. I just deeply, deeply remember after joining the Air Force and having a little bit of a bank account, I went to write my first check, and I realized I didn't know how.
How?
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and to be at a local grocery store and having, a 19 or 20-year-old cashier at the grocery store tell me, "Oh, honey, this is how you do that." And I just remember having that profound moment of like, yeah, I do not know how any of this stuff is supposed to work. And then you kind of notice then that vacuum of what you don't know, and yet you're still being asked to be a part of
Being an
this
adult.
society and
Yeah.
and an adult for sure. So, yeah, that
Yeah.
was kind of my exposure, I suppose, is
So
not
that
to be exposed.
right. That's and which is what's interesting is, statistically, the older generations were far more comfortable. Like it was a known thing. You talked about religion, you did not talk about money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And what we've seen is a pretty monumental shift that today's generation, you don't talk about religion because it's divisive. You
Mm,
talk about money because it's
yeah,
not somehow, which is odd, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so when I counsel or I do planning for younger people, they're very open about their salary and their
yeah.
savings. It's very normal. I think we also just have a lot more, I'd say like technology support, right? Like, so when I
Mm,
think about like credit scores,
yeah.
you probably didn't know your credit score until you were like
Oh,
50 or whatever.
yeah. And
But
quite frankly, didn't want to.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
yeah. But like now you got Credit Karma and
hmm
all these other things where, I've got 18 and 19-year-old students who know their credit score, which is good, right? That's a good thing.
Yeah, but what an interesting shift in that society of wanting to be able to discuss one thing, but not now wanting to be able to discuss another. And I almost kind of think that there's somewhat of a cerebral idea of this is actually better. This is something that has kind of a finite thing that you can kind of really look at and say, this helps me if I understand this. And this has math that you can apply to it and say, if I spend this much, I am going to be here by the time I hit my next paycheck. And again, that's kind of that old school living paycheck to paycheck, but it's pretty simple math. I mean,
Yeah.
if you only make this much and you spend this much more than you're going to be in a net
You'd be in
negative.
trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
But I think the irony of the way we've historically dealt with money is that
Mm,
when you don't teach young people about the power of money or how to use it, how to control it, how to, make it do good things in their life, that's when it can do the most good.
oh,
Right. All
absolutely.
that compounding, all the things we talk about, if you listen to other finance shows that kind of go into more like pure finance topics, what they're always hitting on is starting early, right? And writing it for a really long time. But how do you do that if you didn't even know it existed at that time?
Yeah. And there is that, I think, deep rooted thing that if you don't look at it and acknowledge it, then it's less scary. Or it's more scary, and that's why you don't. It's one of those two things, but you're as a young person, I think there's also a certain part of that immortality that you don't have to worry about it because you're going to live forever. And there's something so insanely dumb about that. But I think we all, to some extent, in our very early 20s, we don't really think about it. We're just trying to get that job that helps us survive.
Sure.
And helping us survive is really, it stays in the front of our heads for so long that once we start realizing that we're on a pretty good glide slope in our career, that we don't want to acknowledge, I should have been saving earlier. I should have been saving earlier.
It, it's funny because I came in to today's show. I actually have a couple of really specific questions that I think make sense based on conversations you and I've had in the
hmm
past. But one just came to me a moment ago. Do you feel like joining the Air Force in some ways, I'm not sure stunted's the right word, but I'm going to use that just because I'm failing to come up with a better one right now. But it insulated you because the Air Force took care of your housing, your food. Like you didn't have to worry about money in a pure sense because it was all sort of just taken care of for you.
It was that, and on top of that, you could be what they would call, you could get an Article 15 if you were super stupid with your money. Meaning that if you went out and bought a Corvette that you could not afford and you ended up getting in trouble with the local car dealership, who could call the commander and say, he seemed to have money, or he told us, and this is again back in the day, most of the time that wouldn't happen just because, you had to at least be able to tie your shoes to get into the Air Force. But, that kind of thing, it really did insulate you. And you had a good group of people that you ran with, that you kind of knew that, yeah, you weren't gonna be able to buy that Corvette necessarily right out of the gate, and you had to be able to live. But, yeah, if you were a young man and unmarried, you really did have a lot of insulation. You had the dorm, your housing, your food, so, yeah, you didn't really have to think about it, and you just didn't get paid that much back in the day,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you really it was
Well,
it was there. Yeah.
I think it's the reason it's so poignant for you and I is
Mm.
because of where we live, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're next to the largest Air Force base or one of the largest in the
Yeah.
world. So, I do when I'm for that reason, I'm obviously interacting with a lot of military families when I do, planning type stuff, and I do sometimes get this sort of, like, pie in the sky type of thing. It's like, "Well, I have a pension." You're like, That's true, and that's good. I'm glad our soldiers have a pension."
Yeah.
But that's probably not enough, and now, if I understand correctly, if you're joining the military now, you can't have that pension, so you're at least 55. Well, if you join the military at 18, you're done at 38. So
Yeah.
there's this huge gap, and
Right.
they come out of the military not really sure how to manage money because they didn't really have to when they were in,
Right.
and so that part is sort of interesting to me that it plays out that way.
Yeah, back in the day, and you're more up on this than I am, but back in the day, if you got your 20 in, then you could theoretically retire,
Right
and
there.
that would
Yeah,
be the pension that
correct.
you would get. And so, based on whatever rank it was that you got out at, yeah. And now, from what I understand, is you said that, yeah, it has changed, and it does change the way that you get to look at it. Is that you do have to have something to help get you to ride the rest of your time to that spot where you can start drawing that.
Well, that's so my ex-wife is military,
Yeah.
retired military,
Right.
congratulations to her, and she was under the old guard where
Yeah.
she was able to retire. I mean, she retired in her early 40s
Sure.
with all her time in, her rank and everything, and she got her pension essentially right away.
Yeah.
But when she was talking to new recruits, she was
Mm.
making it really clear to them, like, "This won't be the case for you. They're gonna have this g
Mm.
unless you go for a really long time,
Right.
you're gonna have this gap there." So I think it's just those sort of things, and it's again, I'm not trying to get into the planning atmosphere. It's more I find it interesting what happens mentally when you're in that environment, and it's sort of all these decisions are made for you. So you go from your parents, kind of in your
Mm.
case, you said your dad
Yeah.
sort of handled everything as the colonel,
Right.
and then you go into you join the Air Force, and it's like now there's another colonel making
Yeah.
the
Right.
decisions.
Indeed. Yeah, and that recognizing that sometimes that insulation will also keep you from, being knowledgeable. I know that my dad and my mom loved us. There was no doubt about that at all. And I think that they probably were keeping us from having to worry about money. And I think that was the thought. And that money perhaps had kind of, it wasn't a dirty thing, but it just wasn't the thing that you wanted your kids to necessarily have to. I don't know if worry about it is
Focus
the right, but
on or
focus on
yeah.
it and grow up and do things that are within the family budget, and that was it. I felt really lucky when you look back on it. I think if there are parents out there or young folks that are out there that are listening to this, try to break that train of thought or that ideal if you can, and just kind of sit down and if you can generate that conversation with your folks, or if you're the parents out there, do kind of break that habit and say, no, this is actually really good. Have that conversation. And then if you don't have as much knowledge, find a financial planner or go online, do a little Google research, and then compare your notes on what is a good way of discussing money with
Mhm.
your kids. I don't think that there's anything better in in that kind of advice than to just have that conversation with them early, that it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to be, talked about.
Yeah, so we will on the show, one of the future podcast episodes, we will have a entire conversation on how you sort of bring your children along. And
Mm,
I've mentioned it a couple of times on the
that's
show
good.
because it is important. And I think a lot of it is that parents may not know it themselves,
Mm,
right? I mean, just candidly, a lot of Americans don't know money themselves. And
yeah.
so they're a little afraid to discuss it with their kids. But I think what's important in that context is to understand that the very fact you're trying to have the conversation opens the child up to, okay, this is an okay topic for me to discuss. If I have questions, I can come to mom or dad. If you're in an environment where you're raised and basically money is taboo,
Indeed.
you're never going to learn about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, cause you're not supposed to learn about it. So
Right. And I think there's something about the way that I've been kind of conditioned is that when there's some television commercials right now that are talking about and they advocate having a credit card for your kid. And I when I saw that, my knee-jerk conditioned response was credit
what?
cards for kids, bad.
What are we doing?
What are we
Yeah.
doing? And yet if you maybe take a 5,000 or 10,000 foot view of that, the idea would be this is a way of teaching about credit. This is a way of teaching about here is a sum of money that you are allotted and you get to manage that, and you manage that per month on what either the folks have put on there as a spending that you can use this to buy things, but you have to then think about is this a want or a need? And you begin to start having that conversation within yourself.
Yeah, I've, as you are well aware, I have done this type of stuff for years, and I am staunch believer that money is about habits, it's about behavior, it's about process. It's not about math. It never has been and
Mm,
never will be.
right.
The math will never change. It doesn't get easier. It doesn't make any difference. Your behavior is what changes. And one of the reasons that I'm so adamant about my children had not credit cards, they had debit cards, but they got debit cards when they were like 13 years old. And part of it was, and I like to be really clear with like when I teach my students, if you can't learn the process and the proper steps to make a good purchase with $10, you can't make a good purchase with $10,000. There is no difference in those two purchases, 0.
And
And,
yeah,
and so you have to learn that type of
yeah.
the process that goes into it, right? You are obviously aware of the fact that, my wife and I had a disagreement about our kitchen. I thought it
Mm,
was fine.
mhm,
She
mhm,
didn't.
mm.
We compromised and we tore the whole thing out and got a new one.
Sounds like a compromise to me.
So, happy Valentine's to my wife. I
Yes,
love you.
indeed.
But but this is, at our old house, we had done a kitchen remodel and we didn't have the resources at the time. We didn't have the money we do now. But the process was the same, right? So if you end up with $5,000 cabinets or you end up with $20,000 cabinets, there is no difference in the decision making process. It's just the dollars on the page that change. So we need to teach kids that the truth of that, right? That you've got to be, to your point, needs and wants and that kind of stuff, internalizing that early so that as the dollars get bigger, the you're able to maintain the same, sort of standards of practice, if you will.
Yeah, and I think there's something about, the wise decision to do both kitchens, as every no, but at most real estate people will tell you kitchens and bathrooms, they
Sure.
are the return on your investment. You weren't trying to upscale, your closet with a $10,000 redo of a
We
closet.
already did that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the point, is that wise investments, I think, part of the key.
No, no, I appreciate you trying to defend my stupid decisions. No, I think this is far more important, a lesson for all of the people out there to learn,
Hmm.
which is simply happy wife, happy life.
Indeed.
And so
Indeed.
it was entirely based on that. You can set all the money
Right.
aside. I went with pure
In
psychology. So I want to shift gears a little bit because I think there's a second area of your early life and your upbringing that I think matters. And we won't go into the divisive side of it, but you were raised, excuse me, in a religion that had a certain view of money, and you and I have talked about this, that there
Oh,
was
yeah.
a little bit of the, we call it the doomsday prepping, right?
Yes.
And so, again, we don't have to go into the details of it,
Sure.
but I'm just curious how that sort of impacted you. Do you still feel that impact now?
Yeah, well, I think it's any kind of like early conditioning is kind of hard to rinse out of the brain, even if you can intellectualize it. You still have a certain amount of that back in your young conditioned mind to be somewhat. I don't want to be fatalistic, but maybe thinking, well, am I gonna? Is it gonna matter when I hit 50? Because chances are we're gonna be going from rubble to rubble. That does kind of impact the way that you do look at those decades where you get to celebrate birthdays. Like I said earlier, in your 20s, you're pretty much thinking that you're going to be immortal. Then you start to think about, yeah, but the way I was raised was to think this is going to be, it's going to end very
At
soon.
some point
At
soon.
some point, things won't be as pleasant as they are now, and how grateful I am that that hasn't come to pass. But yeah, I think that really did impact me. And to go back to just one other point, I thought it was interesting. I was sitting here thinking about the way I was raised in my house, though that money wasn't talked about. Isn't it funny how that also carried over into the way that I had talk to my sons or not talk to my sons about money is that it
So you were not a big discussion of money in
we
your
did no, I mean, we did have talks about it. I think my sons had just a wonderful, and I'm gonna call it genetic work ethic that I think they probably certainly didn't get from me, they got from their grandpa.
the other half.
They truly, truly, yeah, and the other half just were just phenomenal workers at whatever part-time job they got. They absolutely
Sure.
destroyed it, would move to the top of the chain, whatever that was, and I couldn't have been prouder of them. And always worked, always worked. I think from 16, both my sons did that. And I think they probably got more money information from the internet and their friends. And I think that to me I'll just say is a bit of a failing on my part, just because as a divorced dad, you didn't want to bring them down. It was
Yeah.
like when our time together, it was to have fun. It was to not bring them down and say, this is
Let's
what I
talk
can.
about a budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
on the bright side, as we
Yeah.
know, everything on the internet is true. So they so they probably learned some good stuff there. Yeah. No, I think it's I mean, and my 3 children are sort of the same boat where they're all very hard workers. I'm very proud of the
Yeah.
work ethic they
Yeah.
have. But you also know I've been very intentional about my 3 kids knowing money or understanding
Sure.
it, and they are by no means experts. I mean, they're still teenagers, but I think it's just this entire idea that they're comfortable with the idea, they're comfortable with the topic, and they know if although the funny thing is, it's never my kids that come to me with questions, it's always their friends.
Yeah.
Jason's dad or, Lincoln's dad, go to him, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, um,
Isn't it funny that I imparted a certain, my background as an artist. Um, I think that was that conversation that I imparted to my sons, who both pursued arts
art, yeah.
in their career, music and acting and that kind of thing. And I remember when they came to me and said this is something that they wanted to pursue. I make this joke, but I said just make sure that your girlfriends like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because it's a tough life. But if you're smart, you can make it. It's just that initial up ramp can be tough to make a living doing that, but go
Well,
for it if that's what you want.
and I think so that's a great transition, thank you for that, I appreciate
Sure.
you doing my job for me. Because here at Wright State, right, we have a huge theater and arts department, and
Ah,
very
yeah.
well known, very, very good, program, and I do think that a lot and you and I have had a lot of these discussions. I think in some ways you acknowledge that you've suffered from the imposter syndrome, right? That
Oh,
being an
indeed.
artist in its loosest sense of the word
Mhm.
meant you had to be poor, the starving artist kind
Oh,
of
that
motif, right?
yeah, that
And
was
so
expected.
yeah,
Yeah,
so do you think, in your opinion, talk to me about how you think that affected your money journey?
absolutely. Yes, I think that being an artist and having the imposter syndrome along with the idea that anything that you create is going to be somewhat of a basement sale kind of a thing is that, how is it that what I put on canvas or what I created as a sculpture or whatever, because I was young, couldn't possibly be seen as good unless you're somehow in the New York market and you happen to know an art gallery friend who might just show your stuff. That was kind of what you were told, is that this is the route that you're going to take. If you live in the Midwest, it's going to be a tough one. If you live on either one of the coasts, you have a better chance at maybe somebody discovering you.
More competition
A
too, though.
lot more competition, exactly. And so, yeah, I think that it influences your brain in thinking you're never really going to have any money. So, what's the sense of saving it? I know that seems to be as dumb as it can be, but you really it was so sporadic when the money did come in that you thought, especially as I said in your 20s, you're just like, yeah, I'm probably immortal, so why wouldn't I just spend this? And that starts that kind of impossible wheel turning. That why would I even want to save money? Because I'm so worried about rent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am so worried about food, and so yeah, and it makes you kind of begin to question, and it begins to start to steer your your art. And when you begin to start feeling that happen, that's when you begin to start feeling like, okay, I need to stop and think hard about some of these decisions. And can I still have an art career and also be able to make sure that my loved ones aren't impacted by the choices that I've made where I'm not able to help with the rent. I'm not able to help with the food. And that can really be impactful to say the least.
Well, you hear I think we hear examples of that on the other side where you have, let's say, a musician who's really, really good
Mm,
and they're given the opportunity to change their art to be more commercialized, to become wealthy, right? Like
yeah,
they see a big pot of gold and you hear the stories where they struggle because they don't want to change who they are, but they also recognize the big dollar signs out there,
sure.
right? And we call them sellouts, right? I
Yeah,
mean, so
sure.
we have a
Yeah,
word for it.
yeah.
And I think that that can be really tough. But going back to the juxtaposition of when you don't have a lot of money coming in and then you feel, well, I can't save any of it. And I think that's a really common struggle that I hear even outside of the artist community. I mean, just in general across the
Mm.
board. There's a specific person who I will not use names, but I know listens to this show frequently, who is struggling with this right now. This young lady has openly said, my husband and I don't have a lot of money coming in, and therefore we sort of have this fatalistic, like, well, then
Oh,
what's the point of
yeah,
saving? Which, to your point, actually runs counter to what we would think would be, the wise thing to do.
yeah.
But I do get it, right? And I think this is going back to the theme of this show, as we always kind of circle around to. That's not a math problem, right? That's a
Mhm.
mental issue. That's a psychological problem where you're struggling to overcome this thought pattern you have.
Yeah, and well, I think that that goes back to, and believe me, I've not been paid to endorse my friend with the other mic, but I have to say that there is something uh, I I really can't even put into words as well that I want to share such a grateful moment that working out at the gym and chatting with this person and my wife and I just having very loose general conversations with this person Jason and began to start seeing that this person knew what they were talking about and
I
started taking
told
an
you.
interest. Really, truly, just having that other voice other than our own.
Mhm.
And there's something that I would encourage anybody that's out there listening or having these kinds of things is reach outside of your own circle if you can. Do a little bit of research, check that research against other things. And then if you can find it in your budget, go out and start asking other people, especially if they are certified or if they have a financial background, get that other voice in your head to start saying, I need to break the cycle of not being realistic about, um, whether it's a 401k or whether it's just starting a savings plan. The idea of saying maybe you only have $10 a week to put away. That's more than not. The idea that you are just putting $10 away, it does accumulate. But what it also does is it makes the brain appreciate what you've done in a year. It makes the brain appreciate that you could have probably done 15 and maybe next year, we're going to do 15. And then all of a sudden, you're taking that into account. You're having a conversation. You tell your better half, wow, we have this much in savings only because we did the minimum. What if we really pushed it this year? And then maybe you do go and talk to a financial advisor. It's somebody that in a casual conversation that you want to start really being serious about what you do with your 401k or whatever. But I have to say thank you to you, Jason. And my wife says that as well. You have changed our life and taken such a burden because we knew that we were putting money away, but we just didn't ever want to look at it. We knew that we were socking money away with our 401k and we were also saving money. But honest to God, we didn't want to look at it. And when you approached us and said, let's look at it, and that truly changed my life. And I just have to give you such a grateful and heartfelt thank you
Oh,
on this Valentine's Day.
right. Yeah. That's my Valentine's gift.
Oh, so mushy.
Yes. No, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
think it highlights one of the things you said there is really that, again, this is not a math problem.
Mm,
This is for most people a psychological problem.
true.
And when you start to put any amount of savings away, again, to your point, typically through a 401k, but whatever it may be,
Yeah.
just it could just be a straight up savings account. When you do that, you start to show yourself evidence that I am capable of this, and you start to see it working. And then it becomes, again, process because to your point, when you let's say you're gonna do transfers to your savings account. When you log into your bank account and you move $10, it is absolutely no more effort to move $20. No
Yeah.
different. You just hit a different key on the keypad. And so once you get that system down, you get that process down, that routine that's built into your brain, right? We're creatures of habit, right?
Yeah.
So once the good habit is going,
Yep.
it's super easy to keep it going. And so I think statistically, that's why 401ks are the powerhouse they are, right?
Y-
Because you just set it and forget it.
And to that point, I'll tell a funny story. I was working at a in a corporate environment and doing software development, and I had um, um, my boss, and who was a very nice person, and I would say very nice outside of work, but inside of work, she could lay it down, and there was no two ways about it. And I had been working at this corporate job for about I don't know about 3 years. And I was in my office and she opens the door and she goes, um, yeah, HR just told me that you're not putting any money in 401k. And I looked up and I go, yeah, no.
I'm an
And
artist. I'm an artist.
yeah. And I really still had that mentality, even though I was doing the suit and tie thing. She goes, that's changing right now. And she says, come on. And I'm like looking at her thinking, I don't think she's allowed to make me do anything, with my money. And yet it just this force of nature. Vicky walked me down to the HR financial part of our corporate environment. And she said, you're working with this person. Sherry's going to take care of you. You're contributing to 401k starting now.
Wow.
And I remember kind of having this moment of like, man, she want to, yeah. And the last thing I think she said to me, which I thought was really, she says, once this starts, you won't notice it. Once this starts, Michael, you won't notice it. And I'm thinking to myself, of course I'm going to notice it. Of course. But it's so very, very true that you you really, once you kind of give up that you're doing something good for yourself, it's kind of like a salve that your brain just goes, don't worry about this. This is money that's going into
Well,
something.
and
And
it's only one paycheck you notice it, and then after that, it just becomes your normal paycheck.
exactly.
So I want you to this dovetails with something I covered in one of the early episodes of the show, and I want you to personalize this and kind of ground it for us. My belief in what I proclaim to people is that we don't know what our paychecks actually are when we get a job, right? So if you get
Yeah.
a job making $75,000 a year, let's just say,
Right.
you don't actually have any idea what that means in a paycheck, like what's going to hit your bank account. We have
Right.
no way of processing that. You've got taxes, you've got maybe health insurance, there's all
Yeah.
this other stuff. And so if your very first paycheck that shows up in your bank is $1,000, you just go, oh, okay, $1,000 must be a $75,000 job. And so if you start that 401k and that first paycheck ends up being $900 instead, well, your brain just goes, "Oh, okay, that's what a $75,000 job
Yeah.
is." So do you feel that sense?
I think what you are mentioning is absolutely true. That the idea that maybe that first paycheck, you might scrutinize it a little bit, but there is something about that mantra and that chant that you've heard, which is you don't notice it once you begin to start making these adjustments, and all of a sudden the math that we do is something that kind of self adjusts
Mhm.
and you don't really notice it. And yet, man, I got to tell you, when that day came when I did look at my 401k and I said, wait, It's how
I have
much?
how much? Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty nice, I
'Cause
have
that
to
was the
tell you.
day I was like, "Ah, why am I not charging this guy?" No. No, I think it's also important that, just people understand, again, this is all about psychology for this show, but from a mathematical perspective, if you decide to put 8% away for your 401k or you decide to put 9%, you're still keeping 91 or 92,
Yeah,
right? So you are still playing with house money on your paycheck side. But the 401k, it's a big difference. I mean, if you go from yeah, if you increase your 401k from 4% to 6%, you only felt a 2% decrease in your paycheck. Well, actually not even when you take taxes,
yeah,
but your 401k got a 50% increase
yeah.
because it went from 4 to 6. It's the math plays to your favor when you play this game, right?
Oh,
And so
indeed. Yeah.
now,
And for
okay,
the artists out there that we just lost when we started talking 2% and 90% and 5%, um,
please
and
come back.
please come back because it's really more of a maybe not a rhetorical conversation, but it's really one that just says these things begin to balance out. They begin to balance out with a little bit of navigation and a little bit of forethought. It's really kind of amazing. And I think one of the things that I would want to get out is that the fear that I carried around in me, and I know that my wife also had that, is that we weren't wanting to navigate and acknowledge the water that we were in. We just said, we're sailing
Just
this
keep
way,
swimming. Yeah,
just
yeah.
keep going this way. And again, having that voice that said, you guys are okay, but you could do this. You guys are okay, but you could do that. Once that bit of sunshine gets kind of illuminated and you begin to look at it and you go, oh, so we're not that bad off? Again, I cannot tell you how grateful we were
Well,
that you looked at our finances and said, you guys are okay.
here's what I would say though to all the listeners on the show.
Yeah.
If you don't like my show, blame Mr. Mike because you're the one who encouraged me to do all this nonsense. So, no, so I do
It's
want to
true.
for our last sort of piece of the conversation, I do want to shift gears to the, um, uh, let's say closing in retirement, whatever that may be over
Yeah.
the next, number of years. Um, so there's two things here, I think. One, when I sat down with you guys for the first time and sort of went through your, at that time, this was 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago, something,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a while ago. We went through your financials. I sensed that you guys sort of knew the right answers. What I felt like was that my seconding of those options kinda helped you get over the hurdle because you went, "Okay, if this outsider thinks this." I also think that there was some emotional relief because if there is, let's just say for anybody out there, if there's like, I don't know, there's an asset you have that you're thinking about selling, but you're kind of holding on to it. When somebody else goes, well, this is kind of silly. Why aren't you selling this? It's like, oh, you
Hmm.
kind of just that catch. So did you sense that when we first talked? What was
Ye-
your feelings there?
Oh, what I was really surprised about was that you never came at us as a crusty old know-it-all authoritarian. I think what really surprised me was that you really approached it from a counselor, a person that was looking at different options. But in the beginning, you would think that a financial planner would be all about hard angles, sharp angles. So you either do this or you don't. But if you don't, then you will. And what
Eat ramen
yeah.
forever.
Well, yeah. And what I was really surprised at was that you didn't have, just option one or option two. You had a number of different options and you were able to explain the different paths that if we took that, then this would happen. And boy, was it nice to be able to have that. And I know that maybe not everybody will necessarily have that experience with their financial planner, but at least ask yourself this. It's kind of like getting a second opinion from a doctor, is that you may want to also check that information. I felt really good because we were getting such good advice from somebody that I worked out with, or I'd see at the gym and would really have more of a casual conversation, but it was still I knew that this person was versed in their studies. They knew what they were talking about. But again, not from like an authoritarian, but from a, well, if you do this, then here's the likely outcome. But if you did this, here is the likely outcome. And I have to say that was one of the things that was most refreshing was that I really wouldn't think that somebody that was such a financial nerd could be such a cool dude too.
I
You know what I mean?
I take that personally and also represent that, yes. No, I would take that. I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I would take that and I would highlight for anybody that's listening. The key takeaway there is you should not work with a financial planner who is not willing to accommodate your context.
Hmm.
There is no
Yes.
financial plan in the world that works for everybody. That's not a real thing.
Yeah.
It only works if it works for you. And you're right. Us having sort of the friendship from the gym helped because I sort of had some of that background context, right?
Right.
But the reality is, if you're out there looking for advice, looking for help, thinking about getting a planner, I am incredibly biased here, so let me be clear about that. You should get a CFP. If they're not a certified financial planner, that bothers me.
Yeah.
Our industry has a standard of practice for a reason. There is a credential that says this person knows the technical knowledge. You should want that,
Right.
right? But beyond that, the whoever you do choose should also care about your situation and understand the context because if I can create the best plan in the world, but if you won't follow it, it's a worthless plan, right? So the next piece I wanted to sort of touch on and I will say, you've given me lots of kudos, which is why I pay you. But I want to throw one back at you because I've been incredibly gratified and pleased as the planner in me, the fidelity that you and your wife have shown to the plan, and and then as the friend to you, I'm just deeply gratified that, like, to see you guys on a path to an incredible retirement is awesome, right? Like, that's what we want
Yeah.
for our friends, and so it's been, cool. So talk me through, like, how have the last 3 or 4 years been? Because you guys went, like, into, like, hyper mode. I mean, you got real serious.
Mhm.
You took some major steps.
Yep.
You did some, in your case, you sold a couple of your toys. Like,
Yeah.
you've done some stuff that was really powerful, and it's made a drastic change. I mean, even I when we got together about 6 months ago or whatever it
Yeah.
was, even I was a little shocked, like, "Wow, this
Yeah.
really worked."
Part of the artist thing is that and I used to make the joke that my wife says I can retire when I'm 80. We both really didn't think about this. And I think talking to somebody and having that plan laid out in front of you and the idea of being able to, if you just do this, then this is going to be the outcome. If you do this and this will be the outcome. And if you do this and this is what going to be the outcome. And it just laid out these scenarios that we were able to look at and go, yeah, we can do this. We can do this. And it was just really nice having a sounding board to be able to go in and say, okay, we've done this. We've able to pull this off, and it really helped tremendously, having that idea that somewhere in our lifespan is that retirement is going to happen. There is going to be the
Not just possible,
it's
it's
not just
going to
it's
happen.
going to
Yeah.
happen, and we're going to be, prepared for it. And everybody deviates a little bit here and there as they go, and the best laid plans of all that do happen. But boy, have we been fortunate just to have that moment where some sunshine was cast in our direction. It illuminated some things, and it. I cannot. Again, the joke of you can retire when you're 80. I really had that as a mindset, and really, truly, just being able to have that conversation. And I guess maybe it does sound kind of dumb, to say, "What you didn't ever look at your retirement and do the simple math?" No, I did, but I just didn't trust it. And when you have somebody that you trust that has a conversation more than once and dumbs it down a little bit, that truly helped tremendously,
Well,
really.
yeah, and I think there's two additional tidbits that come from your experience in working with you that I think are important for people. Number one, and I'd like you to speak to this sort of quickly here. There's this idea that you have to be really super involved with your finances all the time. You got to really work at it and pay attention to it in order for it to work. And I don't believe that to be true. And so, I mean, in the last 4 years where you've gone from, you guys were good, but now you're like really set up for retirement, like really positively. In honesty, how much time have you and I really genuinely spent working on your finances? It's not a lot.
No. No, I think the conversations that we would have, just kind of back and forth at the gym were really kind of nice, touch
Mhm.
stone moments where we were able to kind of go, okay, well, that makes sense. And then I also have to say that there is something about having a good partner. Having a good partner to have that ability to also have that sounding board and saying, "Hey, we're in this together. What he said, does that sound good? Yeah, we can do that, or we can do that, but we may have to modify this."
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the secret of whatever success that we had was that we were able, all three of us were able to kind of nod our heads and say, "That's a good direction." And that, yeah,
Well, that's a really important point that I hadn't really thought of is that, again, for the listeners out there, when you're choosing someone to trust help you through these situations,
mm,
you can't just have one of the spouses that's comfortable with the plan or advice
oh,
or whatever it
indeed,
is. I think they do have to have a good connection with both, right? Because there were parts of your plan that Sharon was more directly taken care of, if you will.
hmm,
And I would chat with her about those and you would kind of like be like, yeah, yeah, you guys take care of it, whatever. And then there was other parts that were more you specifically. And so I think it is important that you have that all three of the people in that triangle are comfortable with each other
yeah,
to keep it sort of balanced. I also want to piggyback on this comment about the importance of the partner. And you've heard this story before. My first 10 to 15 years of my professional life, I'd like to believe just as intelligent as I am now.
mm,
I mean, I didn't quite have as much education as I do at this point, but I was still relatively my same self. I still had the same work ethic. All these other factors were the same. And I wasn't really getting anywhere. And then the second half of my professional career is when you introduce my wife, Sarah, to the equation. Um, and just the dramatic impact it has. It's not this is no criticism of my ex-wife. She's a great person. I have no problem with her
mm,
personally, but we weren't on the same page, right? Just the
yeah,
goals were different. The plan we wanted for our life was
sure,
just different.
yeah,
And when you get into sync with your partner,
hmm.
I think it makes a massive difference in the momentum you can build and the support you give each other and those kind of things.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think it speaks very, very well to the spouse thing. And on your case, obviously, I know Sharon very well.
Yeah.
She's much smarter than you are, which is helpful, but so
There's no argument.
you're the artist.
Absolutely, yeah, there is no argument there. But I think it goes back to that earlier point that you made about, how we are able to gauge, our lives, and how feel that syncopated energy of our partners. Happy life, is how well you share it, and so, yeah, I feel really blessed and very lucky to, have such a great partner in my
Yeah.
wife, Sharon.
So we only have a couple minutes left here, and
Sure.
I wanna hit something kind of
Am
important
I
with
gonna
you.
be able to get my harmonica solo in here, or was that
We'll
gonna be
get
for
yeah,
another time?
that's the second show that comes right after this. Terrible music with Mike.
Yes.
So, um, I just wanna sort of get your thoughts on. I know you're perhaps still a little ways away from retirement, whatever that may be over the
Yeah.
next couple of
Good
years, but
good 15 minutes.
right, this is Sunday,
Right.
but, uh, what are your feelings there? Just in general, like, what are you thinking about as you approach it? Now that you're a little more comfortable with the fiscal side of it, right?
Mhm.
What does it feel like? I wanna give it to me because
Mm.
I want to feel that feeling someday.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There is something about conditioned response, and I think that I think there's a certain 11-year-old that lives in us for a very, very long time, and hopefully an artist especially, I think that they never really die. It's that thought of it's weird that you feel choky about this, but it's so weird that 11-year-old gets to come out and play.
Yeah, yeah.
The idea that you are going to have a morning of your own. You're gonna have an afternoon of your own, and that you get to play, an unlimited amount of time with your grandchildren, and that you get to really look at some beautiful sunrises and not have to worry about a meeting that you have to get to. I think that those moments of reflection that I'm just beginning to start really thinking about. But I think play is maybe it's a bad word, but just
That's
maybe
great.
being able to enjoy life and being able to not have that override of having to be somewhere or else. And that or else is so lovely to not have to have over your head as much anymore as a idea of being able to say, house is good, food is good, transportation is good. Those Maslow hierarchy of needs, they're all there. And yet, if I wanted to take a walk and I spent an extra hour in the woods, there's not
So
gonna.
be it.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's exciting. I think that's the important part, and I think it's important that people realize, like, the most important thing money buys is time.
Indeed.
That is the critical component, right? I
Sure.
mean, you're literally the definition of retirement is buying every day of your life. That's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Every remaining day, I'm purchasing it today.
Right. Right.
And I think that's important. Because I'm stupid, I forgot to follow up with my second point from earlier because I'm a spaz. And so the other piece I wanted to highlight, and we certainly will not be giving the listeners your financial picture, but it is important to understand that you were able to retire with less than you thought you needed. I think
Mhm.
which was a big part of our early conversation 4 years ago, that you and your wife believed the number needed to be a lot larger than it actually did.
Yeah.
And I think that was a cornerstone moment for you to be like, "Oh, wait, we actually can get to the number we need."
Right.
Um, and I think that that's a piece that I want the listeners to hear, that there's this idea that, like, well, to retire, I have to have multiple millions of dollars. That is not a true statement.
No, and
Uh,
that goes back to that, comment about having to, be 80 years old
right.
before I retire, and it's because you just did not wanna look at the math and have that horrible recognition that, okay, maybe not 80, maybe 79, and then go, "Oh god, I don't even wanna know," and yet that knowledge is actually something that if you do that when let's say you're 40 or 45, is that, oh no, you're actually going to be okay. You may just have to adjust this or may have to adjust that, but you're getting to it early enough. And when I say 45, that kind of shows how old I am. But really,
Yeah.
it does matter that you start taking this stuff seriously at that time.
Well, and I think it's interesting because your situation was the first time. I mean, I've done this for a long time, right? Like, I've helped a lot of people with this type of stuff, and so I'm supposed to know these things, and I do on an intellectual level, but you were really the first case that I was able to internalize, because when we worked through all of your situation and you realized we're gonna get to retire with less than we thought we needed, and we're still gonna have a really comfortable, really protected, really sheltered retirement, and be fine. It hit me
Hmm.
because I was I don't need as much as I thought I needed, which was interesting. And so I had to take a moment and step back and sort of reevaluate my situation and be like, "Do I need to keep pushing the pedal to the metal for the next 20 years?" And the answer is no, I don't.
Hmm.
I don't need as much as I thought I needed. So it is an interesting thing. I've told you this before. Like, my father was the same situation.
Yeah.
My parents retired, and my dad has mentioned a couple of times, like, I probably should have retired a couple years earlier because we don't need what we have, kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
So it's just an interesting sort of dynamic that I think plays out. Well, we're almost done here. Any last comments? Any things you want to throw wisdom for the youngins out there?
Um,
Since you're 1,000 years old.
No, I would just simply say that the lottery numbers for tonight are going to be no.
My phone number.
Yeah, right. No, I think this has just been such a neat experience and chatting with you over the years and getting again having that bit of sunshine on something that I just didn't want to look at.
Yeah.
And my wife is much smarter than me. Also, did not want to look at. We just kept sticking the money in there, but it was that really nice little moment where let's look at the numbers and let's see where we are. And that simple phrase from that certified financial planner, who happened to also be a lifting buddy, just kind of went, yeah, what, I mean,
What's the harm?
it's what's the harm? And if anything, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. And I thought this just makes sense. And this guy that I trusted implicitly from being at the gym, which sounds really weird, but I just, I knew this guy. And so, yeah, we looked at it and it was really enlightening. And I have to thank you for that.
I appreciate it. I mean,
Yeah.
the other piece there that I thought was interesting you said is, you guys were socking away the money, but really not paying a lot of attention to it. And I think what's important for people to realize out there is that's because the habit was what built the wealth. It wasn't the knowledge. You
Indeed.
didn't understand how, not that you didn't know how 401k worked, but you
No.
didn't know the intricacies,
Hmm.
nor did you really care.
Yeah.
What you knew was, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yep.
I did it,
Yep.
and you built wealth regardless of your of your expertise, right? So
Indeed.
and so the behavior is what caused it. And I think that's the piece. I mean, that's the whole keystone to this entire program, this whole show,
Sure.
is that the habits are what build wealth. It's not your knowledge.
Yeah.
Because you can be the smartest person in the world about money, but if you don't put any money away, it doesn't matter. Right.
Indeed.
So,
Yeah.
well, I appreciate your time.
Oh, yeah. This was
I'm
fun.
I'm sure you and I will talk quite a bit more, but I appreciate everybody joining us today. Again, Money Mixology. I'm Jason. I sincerely hope you had a good time. And if you have any questions, as always, shoot us an email at info@moneymixology.com. We'll be back next Saturday with another guest, and we'll go into some more things. I enjoy it. Have a great week, and talk to you later.
Take care.